Don't look now, but the door just swung wide open for the Big 12 to put not just one, but two teams into the college football playoffs. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Horned Frogs podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything TCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, 817 Raised. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. Everydayers know how today is going to start, especially if you checked out yesterday's episode. However, today's episode wraps up with us truly embodying the beginning of the show, how this is your one-stop shop for everything TCU athletics, because TCU Volleyball is off to a storm at the beginning of the year, and I want to break down the historic start for their season. Segment 2 is going to take a look at the PFF grades, which I believe do really fall in line with the eye test. We always want to see if metrics fall in line with the eye test. Well, let's start that going into this week, and we're going to do this on a continuous basis. But today's episode opens up with a Big 12 victory. This is honestly a Big 12 victory because after being the biggest losers of week 2, which TCU was not a part of, they were not a part of that. But after the Big 12 were the biggest losers of week 2 in college football, they became the biggest winners of week 3 because not only did they have an elite record, when I say elite, I mean literally every single Big 12 team that could win won. And the only ones that lost faced other Big 12 teams. So other than that, you also had Texas A&M going against Notre Dame, which is an SEC versus independent. But the outcome of this game opens the door for the Big 12 to have 2 college football playoff teams. It's just about making sure that they don't eat each other and they actually take care of business. It's going to be a hard route. We'll be honest, it's going to be a hard route, but I think that TCU has the opening to be one of those 2 teams. So let's break this all down because the door is wide open. And I didn't want to come in and have a whole bunch of future forward, a whole bunch of just looking towards the horizon topics as I start taking over the show. I wanted to be really in the present. But when I saw Notre Dame fall to Texas A&M, the only thing that came to my mind was a topic that I did, I think on Thursday's episode, where we discussed TCU's playoff projection. We also talked about TCU's season projection. Would that be good enough to get into the playoffs? Well, another domino just fell. And I do not believe that Notre Dame is going to be a playoff team. Is it a little too early to start talking about TCU's seeding in playoffs? Yeah, probably so. But I don't think it's too early for us to count out Notre Dame because they've lost to Miami and they've lost to Texas A&M in back-to-back weeks to open up the season. And because they are an independent, they don't have a grueling conference schedule to come in and save them. So with that being the case, we have to start looking at other options. If we're talking about the college football playoffs, you have to start looking at other options on who's going to fill that void. Because to me, I feel pretty confident. I'm gonna be honest with you. I feel pretty confident that Notre Dame will not be in this spot. I think that you face Miami and you lose a close one. Okay, cool. You lose to Miami in a close matchup. You can survive that, right? Because Carson Beck leads a game-winning drive. Was it a touchdown? No, I think it was a field goal. Yeah, it was a field goal. Leads a game-winning field goal right after your offense has what could have been a game-winning touchdown. You lose that game in week 1. Miami is one of the best teams in the country. That's completely understandable. You took a shot, you missed. But then you backdoor it with Texas A&M, who Texas A&M is now in the top 10, I believe, but they were a 16th ranked team going into that game. Once again, you score a touchdown that you could have had the game winner on, but then you end up fumbling the snap on the extra point. So now Texas A&M doesn't even need to score a 2-point conversion to win the game at the end. They just need to kick a field goal because you're up 6 instead of 7. I don't know if you would have seen the Aggies get aggressive and actually go for that too. But the point is, you lose 2 close games. that no longer, to me, Notre Dame losing 2 games strips away context. And is that fair? Maybe, maybe not. But when Texas A&M beats Notre Dame and gives them their second loss, it's no longer, oh, we had 1 close loss. No, it's you have 2 losses, and nobody wants to hear how you lost 2 games, right? That's just not a thing when you're Notre Dame. When you're Notre Dame and the only other ranked team on your schedule is USC right now. That's not the thing when you're Notre Dame. You don't get to go against a Big Ten, go against a SEC, right? Like, I don't think that you can excuse 2 losses. I think when properly evaluating them and talking about the playoffs, it's going to be very difficult because what's going to be their signature win? They just missed their 2 biggest opportunities to have that. So does the Big 12 come in? It'll be difficult because the SEC has a lot of good teams. They have LSU, they have Georgia, they have Tennessee, they have Texas A&M, right? I want to count out Bama, but like they have teams on that side. They have Ole Miss, right? They have these schools that they are going to beat each other up, but I also think that they're still going to be highly valued by the time the season ends, and I could see there being 4. So this is how it broke down last year, and we discussed it last week. 12 teams in the playoffs, 1 independent, which was Notre Dame. 1 G5, that's mandatory. You're going to get a G5 no matter what. Is it Tulane? Is it South Florida? We'll see. It's going to be a G5 school, though. 3 SEC schools, 4 Big Ten schools, 2 ACC schools, and 1 Big 12 school. Let me read that again without my asides in between. 12 teams made the college football playoff last year, will be the same this year. 1 independent, 1 G5, 3 SEC schools, 4 Big 10 schools, 2 ACC schools, and 1 Big 12 school. So what you'll see there is of the Power 4 conferences, the Big 12 is the only one that did not see multiple representatives. I think there's a chance that changes in 2025. A chance. It's not a guarantee. Let's be very clear. I could see 4 Big 10 teams getting in again. I could see 2 ACC schools getting in again. Right? I could see Miami and Florida State making the playoffs as we sit here in week 3 way too early. But I could see that happening. The Big Ten tends to have a lot of quality teams. The SEC tends to have a lot of quality teams. But I'll tell you what, I like the Big 12's chances of fighting off a 4th SEC school better than fighting off a 3rd one. I like the Big 12's chances of fighting off a 4th SEC school instead of an independent Notre Dame. And that's what would have been the case. You would have been like, all right, cool. Are you going to keep one of the top 3 schools out of the SEC out in favor of the 2nd best team in the Big 12? I'm going to tell you what, 9 times out of 10, that's not happening. One of the comments talks to me about favoritism and my use of the word favoritism. I have to be better with using words that don't have certain connotations, because when I say SEC favoritism, I really don't mean it in a negative light, though I am very aware of how that light or how those words are not only used in everyday situations, how they're used to the SEC. So that's on me. I shouldn't have used the word favoritism. But the truth is, they do have a leg up when it comes to the decision makers. I can't phrase it any other way. We have to address what it is. If this on the fence, a lot of times they'll give it to the SEC. I just wonder if it's the 4th best SEC school versus the 2nd best Big 12 school, does that change the conversation? I think it has a really good chance of changing it. I really do. So if that's TCU, if that's BYU, if that's Iowa State, if that's Arizona State, still could be them. If that's Utah, that's Texas Tech. I think that they do have a decent chance of beating out the 4th best SEC school. They have a better chance of beating out that than beating out Notre Dame, because Notre Dame plays the independent. Like, it feels like when we watch Notre Dame, let me talk for me. When I watch Notre Dame, and I look at the trajectory of their season, I look at how it transpired, and I look at how we talk about them at the end of the season, it feels like Notre Dame kind of hinges upon 1 to 2 games a year. This year is Miami and Texas A&M. They lost both of those games, so I do not expect them to make the playoffs. Had they won one and lost the other, I do think that it was still a really good chance, because the rest of their games you don't feel overly competitive. So you feel like, okay, once you get past these strongest tests, you're going to cruise through if you're really a top-notch team. Anyway, for now, the way that I look at it is, for TCU specifically, this opens the door to not having to win the Big 12. And I don't want to sit here and wish they don't win the Big 12, but I'll say this: the Big 12 is going to be a tough conference. It would not shock me if a lot of these teams beat up on each other. But fortunately for TCU, they don't have to go against the majority of the heavy hitters. There's 3 ranked teams right now. Iowa State, I was about to say Kansas State, not anymore. They have Iowa State, Texas Tech, and Utah. There you go. So you have 3 schools in the Big 12 that are all ranked. TCU only has to face Iowa State. They only have to face Iowa State, and Iowa State has to come to the Carter. So now that's very important because you have teams like BYU, you have teams like Arizona State that they have to see Utah, they have to see Tech, and they have to see Iowa State. TCU only has to see one of the 3. Funny enough, that 3 only has to see one of the 3. Actually, I don't even think Iowa State faces Utah or Texas Tech. Tech and Utah play this weekend, and that'll be a big time game. I'm actually pretty frustrated that it's at the same time as the Battle of the Iron Skillet. Oh, excuse me. But I'm a little bit upset about that because I would love to watch it, but I'll be checking over. Trust me, anytime it's a commercial, I'm flipping over. I'm gonna try not to do the 2 screens because I do need to be dialed in on TCU, but there will be times when I'm doing the 2 screens. I'm gonna be honest with you because it's a big time matchup in the conference. It's something that really does impact TCU's outlook going forward because you want to see who's going to make that Big 12 championship. To me now, there's 3 ways that a Big 12 team could get in. The most surefire is you win the conference and you're in for sure. That doesn't matter about what happens with the 4th SEC school or nothing. You win the Big 12, you're in. But the other route is you don't make the Big 12 championship and you're a 1-loss team. Because I think there's a chance you may see multiple 1-loss teams in the Big 12, but only one will make the championship, right? I think that's, if we're going to hypothetical world and only realistic hypotheticals, we only deal with those on this show. Realistically, there are 3 routes to there are 3 routes to the college football playoffs for any Big 12 team. Win the championship outright. But let's say that team is undefeated. Well, I think that there could be 2 other 1-loss teams because everybody's not going to face everybody. TCU specifically does not face everybody. They could be a 1-loss team who doesn't make it into the Big 12 championship game. And then that other 1-loss team falls off. Now they're a 2-loss team and you're looking at TCU with 1 solid loss, right? Like not they fell to Colorado loss. I mean, they fell to the Big 10 or the Big 12 champion loss. You do that, I think you can make the playoffs. The other route is you go undefeated and you lose in the Big 12 championship. Now you're 1 loss, but you are undefeated throughout the season. I do think that could get you in. What you have to fight against is that they are going to lean towards SEC. So if that 4th team is Georgia, if that 4th team is Texas, I knew there was somebody I was forgetting in there. If that 4th team is Alabama, if there's a 4th team in there that has a lot of sway, has a lot of just pull, it's going to be difficult. I'll be honest with you. It's not a sure thing. But Notre Dame losing definitely opens the door. I think that competing against the 4th SEC school versus the 2nd best Big 12 school can still be an uphill battle, but it is one that is much better than going against Notre Dame, who plays nobody for the majority of their season, but won one of their pivotal games. 2 losses for Notre Dame puts them out of the playoff conversation. I'll say for now, because you never want to say never. So it puts them out of the conversation for now, and it opens the conversation for a Utah, for a BYU, for a Tech, for an Iowa State, for a TCU, for a Baylor who wants to get back on the high horse, whoever it may be. It opens the door for a secondary Big 12 team. I can't wait to watch this season play out. But let's go into the PFF grades as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. See, I was right to do this, but I ain't making no money off of that, right? But when Prize Picks comes into play with football being back, I can make money off of my correct decisions. And all it takes is really less than 60 seconds. If you have a minute to spare, you can deal with Prize Picks. And it's simple. You can go with Josh Allen more or less for 270 passing yards. Saquon Barkley more or less for 1 rushing touchdown. You get down to the goal line, might be tush pushing, who knows? But regardless, and this week you have a half a yard. You just need half a yard passing out of Patrick Mahomes, and you're in there. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code Locked On College and get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. That's code Locked On College for $50 in lineup after your first $5 lineup. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On the Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Big 12 so that we can stay educated on not only the TCU Horned Frogs, but the rest of the Big 12. I kind of did that on today's first episode, but TCU can benefit from that. So I thought it was a really interesting way to look at it. But let's look at the TCU PFF grades. And really, I just want to see if this matches the eye test. So let's run through the top 3 positives and the bottom 2. Obviously, those are negatives on both offense and defense. But offense, I mean, who's really surprised? Josh Hoover, Joseph Manjack IV, Jordan Dwyer. Those are your top 3 on offense. And for defense, and I'm going to give an honorable mention to Ed Small, who we will talk about in the positives, though he was number 6 on the list. But I do want to give a special shout out to him because I just feel like we need to highlight his performance even more. It really is an impressive performance. But the bottom 2, Colton Deary and Eric McAllister. So when it comes to offense, is there any surprise that Josh Hoover is the highest graded player? He was the highest graded player offensively or defensively with a 92.6. The only person who scored in the elite range, right? You had Din-Mbuh, or actually Manjack is the next highest scorer. So of everybody, and I was going with everybody with that. You go Hoover, Manjack, Din-Mbuh. Yes, I know I just spoiled the beginning of the defense, but I mean, let's call it a tease. Let's not call it a spoil, right? But Hoover, it was just a very precise day for him. We talk about touchdown to interception ratio. Yes, that was 4-0. But when a quarterback is having a day where you can compare touchdown to incompletion ratio, that's a different conversation. When you're no longer talking about when you're no longer talking about touchdown to interception, and now you're talking about, wow, they only had 2 more incompletions than they did touchdowns, that is the epitome of a precise day. And that's what you could say about Josh Hoover. Hoover had 4 touchdowns, 6 incompletions on the day. That's it. That is a really efficient day. And I know he wishes that he had 3 incompletions, right? He probably wishes he had none, but some of those you just can't avoid, but some he wanted back, right? And that's just a sign of competitor. But 92.6, great day. I don't think there's any surprise. And I do think that matches with what you saw on the eye test. Joseph Manjack, the leading receiver, he was very effective, had a nice 51-yard reception, had another big reception on an out route that I've talked about in the postgame episode. I talked about it on yesterday's episode. I just love that route. I think I love the route, not because it was a fantastic release or a great stem or at the top of the route he did anything special. It was just sharp and the corner dropped. Absolute. I don't know what happened. I ain't seen it in a minute, but he just drops. And I thought that was the standout moment of the play. Manjack catches the ball, turns upfield, gets a nice game. Jordan Dwyer, sneaky game. Jordan Dwyer had a sneakily good game against Abilene Christian. And I don't think it should come as any surprise that he had a good game, but start talking about the wide receivers. Ask somebody who is a TCU fan about the wide receiver play on Saturday versus Abilene Christian. The first name is going to be Joseph Manjack. Understandable. Leading receiver, 100-yard game, first 100-yard game of his career. And the second name that you're going to bring up is Ed Small, because he was the freshman who nobody was looking for who did it. So you're talking about Manjack first and you're talking about Small first. It's kind of easy to forget that Dwyer had 5 catches for 89 yards, and he was putting in work against the cornerback for yet another game. So I call it a sneaky good game only because when talking about the performances, I don't think that he's the first or second name that you bring up in his own position group. Now, Ed Small, honorable mention. Like I said, I just want to do a real quick note of him. Big 12 freshman of the year, had a really good game. And he didn't have a lot of snaps, but he made the most of his snaps, getting half of Hoover's touchdowns and getting 5 receptions and only 20 snaps. So that's a catch every 4th snap that he was on the field. Now let's get into the worst. Unfortunately, we have to live here. Colton Deary, he was just like everybody in the running game, in the TCU offensive line. Really good passing, terrible at run blocking. And he was worse than everybody else, and that's what brought him down. See, he was only the 4th best offensive lineman when it came to pass blocking, but he was also in the high 70s. So that tells you how much time that Josh Hoover had. If he was the fourth best offensive lineman in pass block, and he was still really good. The problem is he had a absolutely terrible run game score. His run blocking score was in the 50s, and you know what? That's actually how most of the offensive linemen was as well. They did not do a great job being in the, or they didn't get a great grade in the run game. I thought that they did open some holes here and there. So, I don't think I saw it as below average, but that's how TCU, or that's how PFF saw it. And then Eric McAllister, for the second week in a row, didn't really get going. We'll be watching closely. I still think that there's a chance. Of course, him and Hoover have an already built-in chemistry, but I'm leaning more and more towards Dwyer being a guy who is going to outproduce McAllister this year. It's only 2 games, so I'm not all the way convinced. But if it happens again against SMU, and Lord forbid it happens against Arizona State, and that's 4 games in a row where the connection with Hoover to Dwyer looks better than and more frequent than Hoover to McAllister, I'm ready to crown one the new number 1 receiver. But now let's get into the defense, and we're going to kind of speed through the defenders real quick. Actually, no, we're not, because I have a lot to say about Din-Mbuh and the third guy on this list. But Ansel Din-Mbuh, 78.5. You have Austin Jordan, who had a 77.2, and you also have Nnamdi Obiizor, and he has a 76. I don't think I gave the grades for the other guys, but Manjack had a 78.7, Dwyer had a 76.5, and Hoover had a 92.6. But when it comes to Din-Mbuh, that was my defensive star. And honestly, this was the epitome of eye test. He was extremely disruptive. And I would say he was the most eye-catching player on the field, not named Josh Hoover. I thought that Ansel Din-Mbuh had a fantastic game. And part of that was because he was in the interior. And when you make disruptive plays from the interior, they stand out more. Because a lot of times you're looking at the edge rushers. Yes, you have your interior guys who can muck up the run game, but this is also a player in Din-Mbuh who was pass rushing excellently. This is the guy in Din-Mbuh who had 4 pressures on the day, had a big-time sack, had a chase down. I think he might have had a sack and a half, actually, where he tripped up a quarterback, and you saw his ability to move. I thought that Ansel Din-Mbuh was absolutely fantastic. And when people start criticizing their ability to run, I'm just like, look, Din-Mbuh was handling business. It made me really question. I'm like, I got to go back and watch, because I know that Din-Mbuh wasn't a part of it. When he was in there, everything was stout. He was good. He was solid. And I thought that the run game, which was a 76.9, was very indicative of the day that he had. His pass rush was in the high 60s, but, you wish that was a little bit higher. But he had 4 pressures on the day. He had 4 pressures from the interior defensive lineman spot. He had a sack and a half. I really feel like it's a sack and a half. And I wish that I had that up. Let's see, because I was pretty confident that it was. And then we'll go through everybody else afterwards. But no, I do not want this app to watch WWE, man. Leave me alone. Yeah, Din-Mbuh had a sack and a half, 2 tackles for a loss. I thought he was excellent on the day. 4 pressures. We know he's a run stuffer, but he was excellent at rushing the passer as well. Then you have Austin Jordan with a 77.2, where, he's not getting a lot of targets. So he had 1 catch allowed for 2 yards on 2 targets. The other target was a PBU. So he got a pretty high coverage grade for that. He was a 78.9 in coverage. So solid day in coverage. Now for Nnamdi Obiizor. He came up big. He had one of the biggest plays, which was a sack to force a longer field goal, which I don't know if it would have mattered, because Abilene Christian could not get anything going in the kicking game, and it wasn't because TCU was blocking. They were just very inaccurate. But Obiizor's sack led to a longer field goal for the Wildcats. So at worst, I would say it was directly related to taking points off the board. I really would, because not only did the sack push them back, the sack kept them from getting yards. So even if it went nowhere and the guy still missed the field goal, the sack forced the field goal. So to me, regardless of how you want to flip it or whatever, Nnamdi Obiizor's sack was a big deal. It was very impactful. And to me, it was the thing that took points off the board, because I can't guarantee that they would have made it, but I can guarantee that a first down would have kept them from having to kick it. Then lastly, Devin Deal, worst grade on the day from someone who saw a lot of time. And that's going to be something that changes as we get into bigger games, because when we get into SMU games, when we get into when we get into Iowa State, when we start getting into these games, it's going to be how do I want to say this? It's going to be less of a diversity in snaps, right? Like you're going to see more guys, you're going to see less guys getting snaps. So it's going to be easier to grade out who is a PFF this. But right now you're getting multiple guys getting 15, 20 snaps. This guy getting 40, this guy getting 50, 60, right? Like I think once you get into tougher competition, it's going to be clear on who we should be grading. I'm not telling you to grade for the guy who had 4 snaps on the day, unless he was just absolutely fantastic, had 2 interceptions or had a forced fumble and 2 sacks or something like that. But those are, and then sorry, Jamel Johnson, he was second worst. Moving forward, like I said, we're going to avoid players who don't have a lot of snaps. So that's how we end up getting to him. And I could have went with Avery Helm, who only played 20 snaps, but I thought that going with Johnson, who graded at a 60.5 and allowed a 42-yard catch and also a touchdown, was the right call. That was just some of the coverage deficiencies. You saw that there. But as we wrap up, we're going to take a look at TCU Volleyball, which is off to a genuinely special start to the beginning of this year. And special isn't even the word. Historic is a way more accurate description. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, right now, as I'm speaking. If you're on the YouTube, you can swipe up. It won't cut me out. I'll just be in that little box. You can still see me. If you're on audio, just swipe up. You can still hear me. But I want you to hear me and hear me good. Whether you're looking or just listening, go to Game Time. Go to Game Time right now. If you're in the area, go get yourself a ticket. If you're an end zone sitter, right? Everybody's not an end zone sitter, but if you're an end zone sitter at games, they have a nice little deal for $130. It's way cheaper than the other things in that area. Take advantage while it's here. Prices start all around the Carter at $75. You're looking at really good ticket prices. And if you're one of those people who just can't decide, but you know the general region you want to be in, that's why we have zone deals. That's why we have zone deals. Game Time has it all, including all-in pricing. So I no longer have to sit here and wonder if they're going to hit me with hidden fees. Matter of fact, Game Time is the place to be. What else do I need to tell you? Go to download Game Time now. Download it right now. And use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked on Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. TCU Volleyball is off to not only a special start, they are off to an historic start. They're building off of where they were last year. And now you see them going into their 10th game, or excuse me, their 9th game. And they have the highest ranking that the program has ever had. They are number 9 in the country right now. They've never been a top 10 team. They've never been 9th place. This is an historic beginning to the season. Now, what I won't do is sit here and act like I'm this huge volleyball aficionado. I won't sit here and act like I know all of the terminology or I know all of the players and I know everything that's going on with the Frogs. I will not do that. That'd be disingenuous. But what I will say is TCU Volleyball is playing at a level and achieving the level of success that would make you a volleyball fan, even if you're not. To me, that is a huge compliment. I kind of compare it to the Rangers. I'm not a huge baseball fan. I'm not really big on baseball on TV. But when the Rangers were going on their World Series run, guess who was glued to the seat? And not just, let's see if the Rangers won this game. Let's check the results. I'm rooting for the hometown team. It wasn't that. I was legitimately bought in. I was legitimately trying to, hey, that wasn't a ball. That was a strike. Oh, no, how'd you get that? I was legitimately there rooting for the Texas Rangers. And that's how I'm feeling. I know it's early. It's only 8 games, but I'm getting that feeling when it comes to TCU Volleyball. where it doesn't matter where I landed on volleyball before, which I'll say this, I had watched volleyball when I was in college, and it was always interesting to me. The rapid fire nature of the sport was extremely interesting. Boom, 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 boom. The athleticism of the ladies was extremely not only entertaining, but impressive. This was a sport that was interesting to me. It just wasn't a sport that I spent a lot of time watching, right? TCU volleyball has the ability to change that. They are playing at that level. The only school in the country to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, count them, 5 top 25 wins. When you look at their record and you look at their schedule, you would be really surprised. If I told you that this team was 7-1 and then I showed you the schedule, you would think I was talking about two different teams. But TCU volleyball has gone through the gauntlet and they barely have a scratch on them. Yeah, they've been in some real drag out fights. They've been in some real deep battles, right? Against Missouri, you just had 2 sets that went up into the 30s. So you had real tough battles. You had 5-set matches, but at the same time, you walked away 7-1. At the same time, you walked away 7-1 against 6 top 25 teams. 6 top 25 teams in your first 8 games. You lost your first one to number 3 Pitt, and you haven't lost one yet. You get UCLA, actually, I skipped one. You get Penn State. You get Penn State right away. The day after you lose to Pitt in a tournament, you knock off number 5 Penn State. Then you get number 19 UCLA. And when you start saying that number 19 is low on the resume, that's how you know that you've had a really hot start. Because you knock off number 5, then you get 19 back-to-back. You sweep them in the first game, and then you go 3-1 in the second one. Now, I don't know if gentleman's sweep is a thing in volleyball, but that's the gentleman's sweep where I come from, right? That was a, what's that? What's the opposite of a gentleman for a woman? What is the opposite? Anyway, the point is that they are off to a great start. So you knock off a lady. That's kind of lackluster. A lady sweep. Anyway, the point is, great performances. 3-0, 3-1. We don't have to coin it anyway. These are really strong performances. Then you go against Texas A&M, and they're another top 10 team in the country. You knock them off. It's a real back and forth matchup. You have to get into that final set, but you come out with the victory. So now, what are you paid back with? You get to sit back and relax. You get to face Richmond in Wyoming. You get to face Rhode Island. I think it was Rhode Island. You get to face 2 non-ranked teams. And then you come back with Missouri. And Evan Hendricks had an absolutely phenomenal game versus Missouri. Now, she has been strong all year. She's been really effective. She's the leader in kills on the team. So she's been a really good player all year. I saw one of the saves. It was actually from the Texas A&M game. I saw it live, and then I seen it again when watching SportsCenter that night because it was a top 10 play in the country that day. Hendricks has a really, really strong resume and is capped off right now with a 32 kill game. A 32 kill game against Missouri. She had 14 digs. So you pair, not only do you have a high amount of kills, you also get a good amount of digs as well. So that's 3rd on the season for her. That was her 3rd double-double, and that 14 digs was 3rd in her season total highs, right? So you're looking at somebody who in the majority of the games, double-digit kills, didn't have it in the first matchup. And then against Wyoming in the last game, she actually only played 1 set. She had 6 kills in that game. So guess she came back with a vengeance to play that one. But she's been extremely effective. She's been one of the leader of this team. She's been one of the people who's been leading the charge. But in totality, this is a really talented squad. They really are. They're talented on the front line. They are a good team. So this was something I enjoyed watching. You're seeing the resume be built up. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm this aficionado. When I talk about volleyball and, obviously we primarily discuss football, but like I said in the beginning, everything TCU athletics. When I do talk about volleyball, I'm going to try to do it from as educated as I can, but I'm not going to be arrogant. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to speak from where I am. And I hope to continue talking about volleyball. And hopefully as we go through this season, I'm able to sound more and more intelligent doing it. So if you want to watch my progress, be an everydayer. Let's continue to move forward. Okay. In the meantime, don't forget about tomorrow's episode. We'll be back. I think that we're going to, let's see, what is on the agenda for this week? We're probably going to shift to the Iron Skillet for sure. We're definitely going to shift to the Iron Skillet. It's Wednesday now. We're going to talk about probably containing Kevin Jennings, and maybe SMU giving you some opportunities. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about, but we'll get into it. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.